Throughout the 2020 election cycle and pandemic, the idea that Meta, the parent company of social media giants Facebook and Instagram, was censoring true information as well as conservatives was brushed off as tinfoil hat fodder. Now, Mark Zuckerberg has come clean. He just wrote a damning confession. Zuckerberg actually hinted at this over a year ago on the Lex Fridman Podcast. The episode aired not too long after the release of Elon Musk's viral Twitter files. Fridman did his due diligence as host, probing the tycoon to see if we should expect a similar expose from Facebook. But first, if you enjoy what we do here at National Review, give this video a thumbs up and make sure you're subscribed to our channel for future content. Oh, and ring that bell to receive notifications every time we post. Fridman asked Zuckerberg if Meta was pressured by governments or other interest groups to censor content, and what kind of content.
We want to allow people to express as much as possible, but we have developed clear categories of things that we think are wrong, that we don't want on our services, and we build tools to try to moderate those. So then the question is, okay, what do you do when a government says that they don't want something on the service? These are very complex questions, but I think so. It's difficult to have a one size fits all approach to it. But in general, we're pretty active in kind of advocating and pushing back on requests to take things down.
Zuckerberg said Meta was bullied multiple times by the Biden administration. SCOTUS ultimately declined to weigh in on the scandal, but fast forward 14 months to Zuckerberg's letter in August. He nearly apologizes for all of it. Addressed to Congressman Jim Jordan, chairman of the House Judiciary Committee, Meta CEO Mark Zuckerberg owned up to 3 things. Number 1, censoring pandemic-related content after receiving pressure from the Biden administration. Number 2, pushing down posts about Hunter Biden's laptop from hell. And 3, contributions he made during the last presidential cycle that people believe benefited one party over the other. Just months ago, if your MAGA aunt suggested that her Hunter Biden laptop commentary had been shadow banned before 2020, she would have been called a conspiracist. MSNBC has called the letter red meat for the MAGA crowd. But Zuckerberg had admitted some of these accusations had at least some weight to them. Even the idea that his Zuckerbucks, the $420 million give or take that he and his wife Priscilla Chang donated to mobilize the vote during the pandemic. In 2021, Zuckerberg's letter to Jordan reads, "Senior officials from the Biden administration, including the White House, repeatedly pressured our teams for months to censor certain COVID-19 content, including humor and satire, and expressed a lot of frustrations with our teams when we didn't agree. Ultimately, it was our decision whether or not to take the content down, and we own our decisions. I believe the government pressure was wrong, and I regret that we were not more outspoken about it." Zuckerberg says that with the benefit of hindsight and new information, the platform would have done it differently today. In other words, Mark Zuckerberg, one of the most powerful industry leaders who basically controls much of the internet, is chalking this all up to a learning experience. Just growing pains. Zuckerberg recently said to Joe Rogan that he never anticipated having to deal with such moral unknowns when designing Facebook.
These are values questions, right? Around what do you value more, and those are super tricky questions. And part of what I've struggled with around this is I didn't get into this to basically judge those things. I got into this to design technology that helps people connect.
It hasn't exactly been a banner year for the king of the metaverse when it comes to these ethical questions. Back in January, Senator Josh Hawley slammed Zuckerberg as he testified about child exploitation and Meta's role in surveilling dangerous content for minors.
Who did you fire?
I said you mischaracterized.
37% of teenage girls between 13 and 15 were exposed to unwanted nudity in a week on Instagram. You knew about it. Who did you fire?
Senator, I don't think that's.
Who did you fire?
I'm not going to answer that.
Because you didn't fire anybody.
Hawley raises a good question. Who gets fired? When poor content moderation leads to a misinformed public, a different election outcome, or worst of all, a wrongful death, where does the blame fall? Legislating and litigating the internet is difficult as it's still a relatively new frontier. So the only guidance really is that pesky old Section 230, which was passed 8 years before Facebook was even invented. And we won't even get into AI. Now Zuckerberg claims Meta is ready and more willing to push back against government pressure. Content moderation tools no longer demote stories in the United States, pending the review of so-called fact-checkers. Zuckerberg has no plan to contribute to electoral infrastructure ahead of November 5th. So what do you think? Did Mark Zuckerberg have a change of heart? Speaking to Emily Chang of Bloomberg, he swore to endorse neither candidate and went so far as to call former President Donald Trump's post-bullet fist pump badass.
Seeing Donald Trump get up after getting shot in the face and pump his fist in the air with the American flag is one of the most badass things I've ever seen in my life.
But Trump isn't buying it. In Trump's latest book, Save America, the Republican nominee accuses the tech lord of attempting to steer the 2020 election in favor of Joe Biden. We are watching him closely, Trump writes of Zuckerberg, and if he does anything illegal this time, he will spend the rest of his life in prison, as will others who cheat in the 2024 presidential election. Yikes. Unclear exactly what illegal actions Trump believes a private company has engaged in on its own platform, but it's quite possible that Zuckerberg's centrist shift is an effort to hedge his bets to prevent retaliation under a second Trump term. Only time will tell the fate of the Facebook founder and the outcome of the November election. As for me, I'm still waiting on details about Zuckerberg's cage match for charity against Elon Musk. I'm not holding my breath, nor am I holding out hope that Kamala Harris's newfound moderate positions are an accurate reflection of how she'd govern. If you want to know why she would be far more extreme than Joe Biden, watch this video next, and leave a comment below letting us know what you think the reason for Zuckerberg's sudden change of heart is.